All right, Josh, we have officially done it. We have started a podcast.
Yep, we did it.
This is something I've been thinking about for a while, and I think you and me talked about this maybe a month or so ago now about the idea, and I've wanted to do this for a while, and I just felt like you and me would be the perfect partnership for this because we have similar values when it comes to pitching. I really like what you're doing, and the fact that you're still in your career, I think, is a pretty cool perspective that I personally haven't seen in podcasts where there's a coach and a player that are co-hosting to where you can kind of hit it from both angles. So I'm pretty excited for this. I think there's going to bring a lot of value for people just from the different perspectives that we're going to bring.
Yeah, I agree. I think me coming from the perspective of a player, I can relate to maybe some of the younger kids a little bit more, and you can relate to the coaches and all the expertise that you bring will be super valuable. And I'm just excited to share my story, my journey, and um, provide value to whoever's listening.
Yeah, well, why don't we start with that? Why don't you give the listeners just a brief rundown of your background and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, so all right, where do I start? I started playing when I was 8 years old. I started when I was living in Japan, and then I played all throughout um, until I was about 16. I moved to Australia when I was 10, and so I played baseball in Australia for 6 years. And I was a 16-year-old, and I was throwing 78 miles an hour. And I was like, all right, I got to make a change if I want to get anywhere with baseball. So I made a big change when I was 16. I started training properly. I started pitching, did all the throwing programs. I went out to Seattle, driveline baseball, to train for about 6 months. And yeah, I made huge strides and I was able to get up to about 95, 96 miles an hour at the driveline pro day. And that led to a lot of recruiting. I got recruited by my dream school, which was Stanford. But ultimately, I made the decision to sign with the Phillies in 2019. I played there for 3 years. I got traded to the Rangers, and I've played with the Rangers for 3 years. And now I'm starting my 6th year with the Rangers, and currently in spring training.
That's awesome, man. There's so much to unpack there that I know we could probably have a whole episode just talking about your story. But I am curious, you're throwing 78 at 16. You want to go to, a school like Stanford. Like that's your dream, that's your goal. Like, how did you decide what the best path was for you? Like, how did you decide Driveline was where you needed to go to train? Was it just the results that you had seen them get from guys, or like, how did you ultimately decide on what that path was going to look like?
Yeah, for sure. So I think at that time it was either Top Velocity. Do you know them?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was either Top Velocity or Driveline Baseball. And at first I was all in on Top Velocity because I was like, where the balls, like I'm not too sure about them.
Yeah, yeah.
And at that time, Driveline was doing some pretty crazy stuff, like throwing the 4 pound balls, like max effort, or
Right.
2 pound balls. And so I was like, I don't know. But I did Top Velocity, and I didn't really see the results that I wanted, velocity wise. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna make the shift and go all in on Driveline, and that was one of the best decisions I made.
Yeah, no, I think there's an important lesson there that sometimes when I talk to high school kids or I talk to parents, it's like there's so many options for them that it can be so hard to decide what route they need to go. But I think like you're a good example of whatever route you choose, it doesn't mean you have to be married to it forever. Like if you're not getting the results and you're following the program, you're doing everything that's asked of you for an extended period of time, like it's okay to change plans. It's okay to go another route. And like for you, that change ultimately seems like that's what ultimately helped you get to where you're at now from a development standpoint. And the rest is history at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And I still change stuff. I went to Driveline in 2018, 2019, but then I started training at X2. And
Yep.
that's when, we didn't actually meet, but we were like training together. Um, and I've also done tread athletics. And so I'm just trying to get as good as I can. And I'm just looking for as many resources as possible. And don't think that's a bad thing at all. It's just you're just exploring all possibilities and seeing what really works for you.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like no one has it fully figured out, and if someone says they have every answer and they know everything, probably someone you should steer away from. But like every company, every place, like they're going to have some value that they can provide for you, and it's just figuring out like what are the things that you're going to take from them, and what are the maybe the other areas that you need to seek outside people for, and being able to formulate almost your own program over the years. Like at this point, you know yourself so well as a player because of all these experiences, because you've been playing for as long as you have, that now you kind of know you can decide what's best for you, maybe what's not best for you, and formulate your own program. And it's because of all those experiences that you've been able to take. That's at least what I'm gathering just from listening to you.
Yeah, exactly. And as your body changes and as like you mature, you start to prefer different things, such as like I had surgery on my back 2 years ago, and that really changed how I had to train because now I can't even like do any back squats or deadlifts or anything. I can't do anything that stresses the back. Um, the volume is a lot lower, and so it's just a constant reminder that baseball is it's really hard, and
Yep.
it's just an you just have to like keep evolving and um, just find ways to improve by like just knowing yourself and what works for you.
Yeah. No, I love that. I
Yeah.
love everything about that. Well, I'll give a
Yeah.
brief summary of me and my background, like going back to high school. So I'm 32 years old, or sorry, 31 years old. Once you get in your 30s, you kind of start to forget how old you are. But 31. But yeah, starting back in high school, like I was a left-handed pitcher, did not throw hard at all. I was an outfielder as well, and I actually think after my freshman year, the varsity coach, he didn't even know that I was actually a pitcher. He thought I was just an outfielder. I think I threw like 3 innings my freshman year of high school. And, but I always, once I got to like 15, 16, I knew pitching was probably going to be the best route for me if I wanted to, play at a high level college, or, professional baseball was my ultimate goal. And I really started to invest a lot of time into my pitching development. Now this was, 2007 to 2010 range. So some of the resources that are available now, just I didn't have, but I was constantly searching for things. I was reading forums. I was reading anything I could on the internet about velocity trainings. I knew that's what I needed. I threw, as a freshman, I threw, I think like 67 miles an hour. By my senior year, I was in the low to mid 80s, which was respectable, especially being left-handed. And I had a lot of pitchability. I could throw strikes and had really good off-speed pitches, which in high school, if you can throw off-speed pitches for strikes, you're probably going to get people out. So that was kind of the type of pitcher I was a finesse pitcher, didn't throw hard. I was told I didn't need to throw hard, which wasn't true, based off of what my ultimate goals were, which was to play in the major leagues one day. And ended up going to a junior college in Arizona at South Mountain Community College, played there for 2 years, got to pitch a ton, and then transferred to a Division I school in Virginia, George Mason University. And that was really one of my ultimate goals, was playing Division I baseball. And you'll hear kids say this all the time. They're like, that's all they care about. They want to play D1 baseball. It's the D1 or bust mindset, which looking back on, I don't agree with that mindset. But what I do like about that mindset is most of the time when kids have that, they're setting the bar high for themselves. They want to play at the highest level. So they're setting an expectation for themselves that hopefully is going to motivate them and push them to work hard. The reality is some people talk more than they actually work. And when the motivation goes away and they have to put in the work 5-6 days a week and to do what it takes to get to that level, not every player is willing to do that. But I think the goal of playing at a high level is good as long as the process to get there is in place and you have the work ethic to work towards your goals. So that was me in a nutshell. Like I would do anything it took to play at the highest level. Was able to play there for 2 years. Once again, still did not throw hard. I was low to mid 80s as a senior, got people out, but it didn't matter. I didn't get drafted because I didn't throw hard enough. Like that was the bottom line. Like if you looked at my stats, you looked at my college career, like I was very, very good from a statistical standpoint and being just a good college pitcher. But when it comes to professional baseball, like the reality is you have to have certain thresholds. And I just wasn't at that velocity threshold. So wanted to keep playing. I didn't want to stop playing at that point. So that was when I found out about independent baseball. At the time, didn't know much about it. I just thought it was a place where guys went that didn't have an opportunity to be with an org or didn't get drafted. I personally, going into it, I did not expect the level of competition to be as good as it was. And I was pleasantly surprised, but at the same time, it actually was a little bit of a wake up call because the competition was extremely well. Like the first team I played for had four former big leaguers on the team. Like I was one of the youngest guys on the team, and it was pretty clear within the first couple of weeks that I was no longer the best pitcher on the team. And the level of play was good. It was, it's professional baseball, even though it's not affiliated with an organization, it's still very high level baseball. And the goal is to win games. And if you're not winning, you're not going to be there very long. So I got to see that side of things, the business side of baseball, and played independent ball for 4 years. While I was playing, got into coaching, was coaching at the high school level my first 2 years of independent ball here in Arizona. And then after that, I had an opportunity to be the pitching coach at Arizona Christian University and NAI school in Phoenix. Was doing that once again while I was still playing. Then I ended up having TJ in 2017, or sorry, I ended up having it in the beginning of 2018, but got hurt during the winter of 2017. Thought I was going to keep playing and rehab and keep going, but doors were opening to be a coach and not as many doors were opening to continue playing. So I walked through that door of pursuing coaching full time and went to Virginia Commonwealth University for 1 year as a grad assistant, got my master's in 1 year, and got to be a part of the baseball program. And then at that point, I thought I was going to try to work towards being a Division I baseball coach or a college, pitching coach at a high level. Didn't really think professional baseball was a possibility just because I didn't play for an organization. And really at this time, it was just coming onto the scene where college coaches were getting an opportunity to coach in professional baseball without the playing experience, and had an opportunity to be a pitching coach with the Minnesota Twins organization. Did that for 5 years from 2019 to just this past September. Decided to leave the Twins after this past season to move back to Arizona where I'm from and be able to be with my family more and my kids. And am now doing pitching coach U full time where I train pitchers remotely and in person.
Damn, that's awesome.
That was
That's
a lot.
awesome.
That was more than a quick rundown. I kind of, once I started going, I realized this was going to be more than a 2 minute rundown.
Yeah, no, but that's awesome. I actually didn't know that that story from you. Um, how the coaching actually just came because like the playing opportunities were becoming limited.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was, yeah. So I had surgery in March of 2018, got hurt in December of 2017. And obviously you have TJ in 2018, like that year's a wash. You're not going to play that year. And, found out about the opportunity at Virginia Commonwealth to be a grad assistant. It was only a 1 year program. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'll get a little Division I coaching experience as a grad assistant, get my master's, then I'll keep playing and, then I'll worry about coaching down the road. And it was just like these opportunities were coming up for coaching. And like, I just felt my heart being pushed towards that and just decided to commit to it. So I never fully retired, I guess you want to call it, from playing, but it was pretty clear that coaching was the path I needed to take. So I started to pursue that full time.
Mm. And that's why you can still throw those pens because you're still not retired.
Gotcha. That's right. That's right. I may
Yeah.
not be throwing very hard, but I can at least throw a lot of pitches and learn from things. So yeah, it's funny. I actually think I'm probably a better pitcher now than I was when I actually played.
Really?
I
Oh,
would
that's
I
funny.
would say so. What's funny is velocity wise, I'm throwing the same speed I was in college,
Uh-huh.
if not harder at times. But my off speed is just night and day difference, just because of what I've been able to learn as a coach over the years.
Oh yeah, no, I've been seeing the Twitter and especially that kick change. That's been
Yep,
crazy.
that's my new baby. I love
Uh,
that pitch.
oh really? Yeah. I do have one question though. So, would you have done anything different in your high school days to try to get to a D1 straight away, or did you think the JUCO route made you into who you were today, and you have no regrets about that?
That's a good question. I love the path that I took. Now, I will be transparent. I didn't have a lot of options out of high school to go to a 4 year school because of academic reasons. I was not a very good high school student. I, for some reason, did not think that it mattered very much. And the reality was it did if you want to go to a good 4 year school and play baseball. So I just had in my mindset that baseball was all that mattered. And
Mhm.
that was what I was committing to. And as a result, I slacked in the classroom. And so I was limited from a 4-year school standpoint, anyways. And by my senior year, I basically had in my head I wanted to go to junior college, just because I also had seen, in Arizona, junior college baseball is really good. If you play well your freshman or sophomore year, you are draft eligible. So you can get drafted after those first year or second year. But from a training standpoint, I 100% would have changed my approach, knowing what I know now. I would have spent a lot more time in the weight room because I was a pretty small pitcher. Like by my senior year, I was 5'11", 6 feet, but I only weighed 145 pounds. Like I was small, and I
Mhm.
did work out, but I didn't do the lifts that I started doing once I got to college and what I did after college. Some of the major lifts of squatting and deadlifting, heavier dumbbell chest presses, just lifting heavier in general. I was doing a lot of just, machine based exercises, leg curls, leg press, lat pull downs. You're really just anything that was like a machine based or cable based um, piece of equipment. So I wasn't really pushing myself in the weight room. Like everything was 3 sets of 10 reps. Nothing was like, okay, how much weight can I lift today? Am I actually progressing with my weight each week, or am I just doing the same thing? And that was basically what I was doing. I would do the same weight week over week, gradually progress. So that would be the biggest thing I would change. Throwing wise, I actually like the way I approached throwing. Like I was really into long toss. Like Alan Jaeger was like a big part of my throwing routine following his long toss program. Like I found out about him my sophomore year of high school, I think. And I followed his long toss program pretty religiously, and I could throw the ball super far. It just didn't translate all the time to the mound. And I think looking back, I just was too robotic on the mound and not athletic. I wasn't transferring that high intensity work I would do in long toss, where I was just free and moving easy and explosive. On the mound, it was like I became a robot and I had to place the ball in the zone rather than just let it rip. And I think a lot of it was just the type of coaching that was happening at that time. Like that was kind of the method, especially if you were a soft throwing lefty. It was kind of just, you got to hit spots, just don't try to overthrow, just nice and easy, right to the glove. And that was basically the model I followed until I realized this isn't going to get me where I want to go. I need to actually try to throw hard.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that I see a lot on the internet is that to get to like a D1 or professional baseball, like velo really matters. And at the young ages, I feel like velo is everything, especially like 16, 17 years old. Um, you need to train yourself to be able to throw at least 90 miles an hour. And then you can worry about command, but you need to have that baseline in order to get to the next level. And when people are telling you, hey, just like the velo will come, like you're gonna grow into your body, you don't have to train too hard. Like
Right.
just worry about getting outs and throwing strikes. It it's just hard because that's something that's required to get to the next level. But the message is different
Right.
sometimes.
Well, it's so
Yeah.
hard because you need both, right? Like you have to throw hard or hard-ish to get an
Mhm.
opportunity. But if you get there and you're not throwing any strikes, you're not going to pitch. So it's like you need
Mhm.
both. But I do agree with you. Like, and I think it comes back to understanding what your goals are. Like if your goal is just to play, at a lower level college, like you want to have fun, you want to play college baseball, but you want to enjoy your 4 years of college. Like, yeah, maybe velocity isn't the most important thing. Like you could go to a smaller school and enjoy the 4 years and pitch a little bit. But if like your goals actually are to play Division I baseball, and so most kids, they say they want to play at Power Five schools, they want to play at LSU, they want to play at Arizona State, they want to play at all these big schools. Well, if you look at their roster, you're not going to find a guy that throws under 90 miles an hour. And if you do, they are very unique in either their pitch shapes, their arm slots. Something is unique about them, and I think that is the message I try to send to players: is try to be as unique as you can in as many ways as you can. Being unique means you throw above average velocity. Being unique means you have a funky delivery with a lot of deception. You have extremely high command. And that's one thing that players get confused sometimes, is they think just because they're a soft thrower, that automatically deems them as a command guy. No, you have to earn the right to be called a command guy. Like if you're walking 10% of batters, you're not a command guy. If you're walking 3%, 4%, 5%, okay, we're getting to the territory where you are elite at throwing strikes. And now maybe you can get away with slightly lower velocity. But I think the more uniqueness you can have as a pitcher, the better. And fastball velocity is one of those things because it's flashy, it's sexy. Coaches can measure it easily. So if you have that piece, you're going to get more opportunities and you're going to open more eyes and have a little bit longer runway to actually show those other characteristics.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Just going back to your story, I did have another question on that. Was when you made that transition from player to coach, what were the things that you missed as a player?
I think it's got to be the competing on the mound. Like,
Oh, really?
yes.
Mm,
Oh my gosh, that's like I love training too. Like I'll tell you this, I like training. The training aspect of baseball was one of my favorite parts. Like I loved the process of getting better, especially once I got to college and in professional baseball. Just in that off season of knowing what you need to work on and being able just to dedicate time to your craft was some of my favorite memories. Like working with guys that were my buddies who were in the same position and wanted to get to the next level, wanted to improve their game. Like being able to work with guys on that level and push each other, like that's probably one of the things I miss the most, along with just being on the mound and being able to compete. And at the college level, especially, like there, you're trying to win, a championship. You're trying to win, your conference championship, or you're trying to win, the College World Series if you're at the highest level. And that part is tough to replace. You get that feeling as a coach as well, and like I feel a really good sense of excitement when I see players go through those same things. But it definitely makes me think about my time as a player and being in that same position and just that rush of adrenaline you get when you're on the mound.
mm. That's super interesting because I've asked this question to a lot of retired players who are now coaches or, doing their own thing. And the answers are honestly like super different every time. I hear they miss the camaraderie a
Yep.
lot. I hear that a lot. I actually haven't heard that they miss the competition much though, which is super
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah, but I find that interesting, and yeah, I just want to ask you about that.
Yeah, I try to. What's interesting too about like once you become a coach, the longer you get into coaching, like it starts to become easier to forget about what it felt like to be a player. And I think that's like a really dangerous thing that a coach can do is forget what it's like to be in the player's shoes of the training process, of struggling on the mound, of having success, all these things. Like when you forget what it actually felt like, it can be tough to relate to the player and to actually have some sympathy and the ability to connect with them on what they're actually going through. Because I've seen so many coaches, they get on their players about stuff that they're doing or not doing. And they forget that when they were that age and they were that player, they were doing the exact same things, if not worse. Right. It's easy to forget how hard this game is. And I think the more you can connect with your players on that and like relate to them, and be able to help them through that process, I think it goes a long ways in helping a player's career. And I think that kind of feeds into the main topic that we want to talk about today, which is early season struggles. We're, a couple weeks into the season for most of college baseball, and some players are pressing. It's, you get off to a tough start. Before the season starts, you're envisioning having a really good year. Maybe it's your draft year. You're wanting to get drafted. You put all this extra pressure on yourself. The lights come on and you aren't performing, and you don't know what to do. You're going all over the place mentally and trying to figure out what's wrong. It can be a scary and frustrating time. So I'd be curious what your own experience has been like with whether it's early season struggles or just struggling in general at some point in the season. Like, can you describe that feeling a little bit from your perspective of what that feels like?
Yeah, so I can relate to this a lot because I'm starting my 6th year now. So over my professional career, I've struggled a ton. Um, when I first signed in 2019, I had the yips. So I pretty much couldn't compete that whole year because I couldn't even play catch, let alone throw to a catcher. So, and I've also had a lot of injuries. And so I'm pretty familiar with the struggle. And when we talk about early season struggles, I'm in spring training right now and I'm struggling a little bit physically and mentally. My back is spasming a little bit, and so the performance is down. And all I can say really is that it's normal. Everyone's gonna go through it, and all you can really do is try to fight through it. And that's not the sexy answer. There's no like, um, it's just normal. You really got to fight through it, and
I think it's an important thing to talk about because every player at some point in their career, they're going to struggle, right? Like it doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer or you're fighting to make your high school team. At some point in your career, you're going to have a hard time, whether you're in a slump or you're just not able to fully figure out, what's going on with a pitch, just something will be off. So your ability to overcome those obstacles and to work through it quickly is potentially going to determine how good your career is going to be. And it's a tough thing. Like when you're in the middle of it, it feels like it's impossible to get out of because you're searching, you're trying everything. You're searching for that feeling that you've had when you were good, when everything was lined up. But that's just not the reality, most of the time, if not all the time, right? Like there's very few games where you feel 100%. And just what happens, or I see with players, is they get off to a bad start and it just snowballs on them because they can't help but think about what has already happened instead of thinking about, okay, what do I need to do today to get better? Are they analyzing, exactly what is going on? Is it purely mental, or is there actually something going on with the physical side of a pitch, a location, the way they're using their stuff? And that's something that I'd be curious to ask you about is when you're struggling, like what would you say is usually the issue? Is it something mental, or is it just like you're losing the feel for a pitch and your location's off? Like what are your struggles typically like?
yeah, I think the biggest thing that happens when I'm struggling is that I just want to fix everything all at once. And so when I'm struggling, physically, I'm probably not feeling the best. Mentally, I'm just like kind of out of it. And I'm just like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to fix everything
Yep.
instead of, and it's easier said than done, but just taking a step back and being like, all right, let's formulate a plan and like step by step, how can we um, improve or get back to where we were feeling the best?
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm going through right now is like with my back stuff. I reported, and within a week, my back starts spasming. And so I panic and I'm like, oh my God, I need to fix all of this. I'm in the weight room, like rolling out for like 30 minutes to an hour, just stretching, and it made it worse. And so the biggest thing for me was that I just need to take a step back and be like, all right, this already happened. We need to come up with step-by-step process of like, what can I do daily that will put me in the right direction and steer me in the right direction so that I might not be the best tomorrow, but I'll be improving in the matter of weeks and months. And that's something that I'm working on myself, actually. It's really hard to do in the moment, but that's why having people around you to remind you of these things is super helpful when you're really struggling.
Yeah, for sure. So would you say that your struggles right now are mainly injury based, or like, as you mentioned, it's affecting your performance? Is there something specific that it's affected, like a pitch shape or command or something?
Yeah, so my struggle right now is with the back. And when I'm struggling with the back, my mechanics get out of whack. And that affects my pitch shapes, my velo, and my command. And so everything's just a little bit in a funk. And yeah, so sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
No,
What was
no,
I
you're
saying?
good.
What was I saying?
I think that's relatable too. I mean, whenever you're trying to fight through an injury, which there's plenty of players that do that, right? Like some players might not tell their coach that something's bothering them. What ends up happening is it affects their stuff or their command because you end up compensating. If something doesn't feel right, your body's still going to try to find the best way to achieve the task, which is throwing strikes, executing your pitches. So your body's going to find a solution to do that. And it's probably not going to be the best way, but it's going to do the best way that it is capable of in that moment. And if you do that long enough, you're probably going to lead to more injuries, and your stuff isn't going to be as good. And you're basically showcasing subpar stuff to the coaches, and they're thinking you're healthy and fine when the reality is you're not. What would you say to like kids like that? Like, I mean, I guess the easy answer is to say always communicate when something's hurting, but like, I understand also when players don't want to say something because they want to play, they want to compete, they don't think it's a big deal. Like, what do you think is the best way to handle that as a player if you're dealing with an injury and the communication with a coach?
Yeah, that's such a hard topic because it's such a fine line, right? So if you're injured, if you're feeling something, but you think it's like not a very big thing, then I would say probably just try to fight through it and see if you can do exercises to get through it. Just because if you do say something and the athletic trainer or the coach freaks out and they're like, "Oh my God, like, okay, like we're gonna like rest you for 2 to 4 weeks," when you don't actually need that, you're losing all of that game time.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you do think it's really bad, then you should probably tell them. And this just goes back to you just have to know yourself and know your body.
Yep.
Like for my thing right now, I know I can feel that nothing's really super wrong. It's just like muscle spasming. And so I'm working through it with the athletic trainers, but I'm not freaking out about it and saying, hey, like I need to take a month off. Like I know I can work through it and fight through it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I, yeah, but when I did tear something in my back last season, I spoke up and I was like, okay, I need to take some time off because something really isn't feeling right.
Yeah. Cause like, here's the thing, especially in professional baseball, the stat line doesn't really care if you're hurt, right? Like if we look at your stats, and you're pitching for a month with, let's just say, a hurt back that's really bothering you, but you want to keep pitching, you don't say anything, your stats are probably going to reflect that. Your velocity is probably going to be down. Your pitch shapes aren't going to be as good. Your command's not going to be as good. And that is going to be your stats. Like that, it doesn't matter if you're injured or not. The stats are going to be what they are because you're choosing to fight through something. So like there's that side of it too, from especially when you're in professional baseball and you're being evaluated so much on your performance, is making sure you're in the best position to perform. But I think another thing too, like if we're going high school, college baseball level, the time of year I think plays a big role too in whether you speak up. Because if it's, say it's the fall, it's September, season doesn't start till February. If you're feeling something in September in a fall game, there's no reason, in my opinion, at least, to fight through that if something's bothering you a little bit. Just because you're pitching in meaningless games at that point, like you're prepping for the season. Yes, you want to showcase that you're ready and you're good to go for the season. You want to work on stuff, but if it's going to potentially jeopardize you not being ready for opening day, then that's maybe a different topic. There is a fine line. There's such a fine line between kind of being soft, to put it that way, and knowing that this is something, like you said, you can work through. And it comes down to exactly what you said. Like you have to know yourself. You have to be your own best coach. You have to know your body. You have to know what's normal, what's not normal, and go from there. But it is a fine line that I know every player deals with or tiptoes around. And as a coach, being on the coaching side, like it's a tough balance for me. I usually err on the side of caution. Some coaches err on the side of, if you say you can pitch, I'm going to let you pitch. I usually err on the side of caution, especially historically being a minor league pitching coach. Like those games, they matter, but they don't matter for the ultimate goal for those players. It's to get them to the major leagues. So like if they're hurt, I want to make sure that they speak up and aren't showcasing, a subpar version of themselves or potentially risking a further injury.
Hmm. Yeah, and that was a question that I wanted to ask you was being that minor league pitching coach, and a lot of that happens in the minor leagues, right? Um, Guys are just like feeling something, but they don't want to say anything because
Yep.
if you say something in professional baseball, then everyone freaks out and they're like, all right, you need to get on rehab. Um, so you definitely would rather players just speak up, you think, in the especially in the minor leagues?
I would. I mean, I felt like I had a good relationship with a lot of my players. Like they felt comfortable to tell me if something was bothering them, or I just, because I built such a good relationship with a lot of them, like I could just tell that something was wrong just looking at them and watching them throw. And that's when I'd be like, is your elbow bothering you a little bit, or is your shoulder? I can tell you're doing this or this a little bit differently. And usually at first they'll be like, oh, no, I'm good. And then you look at them for a second longer and they're like, okay, yeah, it's been a little tight the past couple of days. And it's like, okay, it's okay. We don't need to freak out unless it's you actually felt something serious. But if it's just something minor, let's just listen to it. Maybe we'll cut a little bit of volume out today in your catch play, or we'll cut your bullpen down from 30 pitches to 15 pitches, things like that, right? Like if it seems like it's something minor and I've built that trust with the player to where, I trust what they're saying, it comes down to that. Let's just make small adjustments within the program. If it continues for an extended period of time or it's getting worse, obviously there needs to be an intervention. And even usually early on, like I might even get the trainer involved just to help them with maybe some exercises or a little bit of extra treatment after catch play and those types of things. But it doesn't always need to jump from, oh, his arm's bothering him or something's feeling a little off, to, okay, he immediately needs to be shut down and doesn't pick up a baseball. I think a part of being a coach or a good coach with this is knowing, okay, maybe we just dial it back a little bit, but then also knowing, okay, when is the time where we need to shut you down right now immediately?
Yeah, for sure. I agree 100% with that. And yeah, from a player's perspective, and honestly, just talking to you right now, I'm thinking, yeah, there probably isn't too much downside to just saying that you are hurt if you are hurt and if you are feeling something, because the ultimate goal is to like get to the next level, and you want to play the long game instead of the short game of, oh, I'm going to go out and play and I might not be the best that I can be, and that's just not the most optimal thing for your development.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's one angle, right? Early season struggles with injuries and fighting through that, which is a very real thing, especially in pro baseball. I would say this time of year, like spring training, I think historically is like the highest injury rate for the time of year, just because guys want to showcase themselves. They want to show the work that they put in. So they might be going a little extra harder than they should, or they didn't take care of themselves the way they should have this off season and they're ramping up faster. So there's that side of it. And the other side is guys that they're purely just not performing. They're just getting whacked around the yard. They're walking guys, or they're doing, they're just not performing at the level they want to. Like, let's just say you're a college player, you've made 2 starts and you've kind of got your teeth knocked in these first 2 weeks. What would be your process to figure out what the issue is from a performance standpoint? Do you have any thoughts on that, or a process that you would follow?
Yeah, so it would definitely depend on why that happened. So was it I wasn't throwing enough strikes, or I just got hit around?
Yep.
And I would definitely rather the I just got hit around scenario, because that means that you're throwing strikes,
Right.
and there's a high chance that maybe you just got unlucky there
Mm-hmm.
and the hitters just had a good day. The other side, where you're not throwing enough strikes, is a little bit more complicated, because have like that can be physical, that can be mental, but ultimately for me, I would just have to figure out why that happened. And for me, it's mostly mental, especially if I'm feeling well, physically. And so I would go back and see what I was actually thinking during that performance. Was I, scared to throw right down the middle because they were just hitting the crap out of the ball that day, or um, I'm missing arm side a lot, so I didn't want to drill the guy. So subconsciously guiding the ball out to the outside part of the plate, or whatever it is. But I definitely want to go back to that performance and just try to figure out what I was thinking during that time, and try to counter that thinking for my next performance or outing.
I like that. So is this after every outing? Do you have like a time of reflection to kind of look back on what went well, what didn't go well?
Yeah, for sure. We definitely do those reflections with the pitching coach. And I do some on my own as well, especially mental stuff. It's pretty difficult to talk about. And so I journal a lot. And when I journal, it all kind of comes out, and I can really get to the root of things and figure out what I was actually thinking and what steps I need to take to try to um, counter that and get better next time.
Yeah, I like that. Journaling, I've done it a little bit. And when I played, I definitely did it a lot. And one of my things was I would journal before the game. So like the night before, usually I would kind of just write like what my plan was for the next day, like what were some of my process goals that I really wanted to hit, and like if all else fails, these are the 2 or 3 things I want to make sure I'm doing today. And it was usually, or not usually, it always was things that I had control over, whether it was I'm going to follow my pre-pitch routine every single pitch. I am going to I'm going to err on the side of being over aggressive than under aggressive, things that like are more mentality, right? And things that are in my control, because I know if I did those things well, I at least was putting myself in a position to succeed. Doesn't mean I always did, but I at least was covering my bases on the things that I thought were going to put me in the best mental space to perform at my best. So I'd be curious, like pre-pitch routines to me they're undervalued. I don't think enough players either have a pre-pitch routine, are consistent with it, or have a good one. Because from my own experience, like when I was dialed in on that with my breath, my self-talk, my visualization, it was unbelievable how much better I executed my pitches when I did that. Do you have a pre-pitch routine to where you try to do something consistent each pitch, or is it kind of depend on the flow of the game?
Yeah, I definitely work on it, but the thing with pre-pitch routines is that, and this is something that I'm working on right now, is it gets really hard to follow it when things start to get rough
Yeah.
in the game. And it's something that I'm trying to make a subconscious thing. So I'm on the mound and boom, automatically pre-pitch routine. But um, I noticed, especially last season, when things weren't going the way I wanted to, I was starting to panic. I was starting to get quick, and I wasn't doing the pre-pitch routine stuff. And yeah, it's kind of. I definitely agree that it's undervalued for sure. Um, especially if you look at like the basketball players, like if they when they shoot a free throw,
Hmm.
they all the time they have a pre-shooting routine. And so I think it's super valuable for sure. It's just how can I say it? It's not like valued as much as the other things in baseball. So then you can forget it really quick.
For sure, for sure. What
Yeah.
is, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what is your pre-pitch routine?
So my pre-pitch routine is I get on the mound, I swipe the plate twice with both my feet, and then I do a big thing like this, take a breath, and now I'm good to go. I'm right here.
I noticed that actually
Yeah.
when we did bullpens together, you doing that. Do you,
Oh, really? Yeah.
yep. Do you do any like self-talk? Are you telling yourself anything? Like say the catcher calls a fastball inside. Like what is your thought process if there is anything?
Um, honestly, my thing is just I just have one saying. It's just fuck it. Just
Yeah.
fuck it. I'm throwing it as hard as I can. And when I'm in that state of I don't really care what happens, I'm just throwing it as hard as I can. That's when I pitch at my best.
Yep.
It's when I go into the thought process of, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need
Yep.
to make this break a little bit more, is when I get into a little bit of a funk.
Yep.
And so that's where I want to get to mentally each time I go out on the mound. And the challenge is finding a way to do that each time I go out.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And I think a lot of players can relate to that because when you describe a pre-pitch routine, like if I were to walk step by step mine or just listen to you walk step by step through yours, it sounds like it would take a while and that it's just very like regimented. But like when you're in the flow of pitching, like all these things are happening very quickly, subconsciously. You're not actually deliberately having to think about all of these things. But like when you're in the zone and you have the consistency with this where it just becomes habit, it's just natural, right? Like my best games were the ones where I didn't have to tell myself, okay, now in through the nose, out through the mouth, look at the glove, get the sign. Like those thoughts when you're in the zone aren't going through your head. It's just purely you do it. I see the pitch, something aggressive, like you said, like just simple to the point. like attack the glove, let's go, just anything that gets your mindset aggressive. And then for me, just seeing it, like if I could see it in my head as I'm getting the sign, seeing the ball going where I wanted it to go, I had more trust and conviction behind that pitch when I would throw it. And my best games are the ones where that was happening without me having to focus on it. But I think it comes with practice. Like it's not just going to happen. You're not going to magically have a good pre-pitch routine. You're not going to magically have good self-talk and visualization. Like you do have to practice these things. And I'd be curious, your thoughts on this. If you ever do this in bullpens, like if you ever practice it in bullpens. But I like to have guys even on like a light throwing day where they're just playing catch, say it's the day after a game or day after a bullpen, go on the mound and just simulate like 10 to 15 pitches. Like you're not actually throwing the ball, but just like do like a rehearsal almost of simulating the catcher calling the sign. You're going through your pre-pitch routine and you're just going through a mental rehearsal, standing on the mound and just putting yourself in that environment. And the more you do that, it becomes second nature. It becomes natural for you to do when you are in the game and the game tries to speed up on you. Have you ever done anything like that? Like just in like a bullpen or practice setting, gone through your pre-pitch routine?
Yeah, for sure. I think last year our mental performance um, during like part of our mental performance sessions was getting on the mound and getting in some dry reps and going through your pre-pitch routine. And so I have done that, but again, it's something that's just not the sexy thing. So
Yep.
I do forget to do it sometimes. And that's something that I'm also working on is just making that habit, as you said, and making it subconscious is such a valuable thing so that each pitch becomes routine. And I'm also curious as to what is your what was your pre-pitch routine?
Yeah. So similar to you from a process standpoint. So what I would do, I'd look in for the sign, whatever pitch he would call. And like after I shook yes and I'm coming set, while I'm taking my breath, I would also just be visualizing in my head that pitch doing and going exactly where I wanted it to go. And then right before the pitch, I would say something really quick. That was like an aggressive thing, like attack the glove, fastball, if he called a fastball inside, fastball aggressive inside, let's go. Just something quick like that. Like that was it in its simplest form. So get the sign, visualize the ball going exactly where I want it to go while I'm breathing, positive self-talk, attack.
And when you say visualize, how are you visualizing it? Because I know so many people have different ways of visualizing.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's more just like I can't really see the path of the pitch. It's weird. I can only see where I start the pitch on the catcher and where I want to end it.
Interesting.
That's how I see my visualization. How do you see it?
I pretty much can see it exactly. I look at it through my own eyes. Like I know some people like are almost like outside their body when they're visualizing it, like they're looking at themselves doing it. When I'm visualizing, like I'm literally just in my body. I'm in the same exact setting, and I can basically see the shape of the pitch. So I look at basically, yeah, where do I want that pitch to start? Where do I want it to end? And I'm just seeing the line of what that shape would look like. If it's a changeup that I'm trying to throw down and away to a righty, like I'm visualizing it going straight down the middle and then last second fading down and away to the glove side. And I can see the ball moving the way I want it to. And I also try to feel it. Like it's really hard to feel things when you're visualizing, but I try to feel like what my arm is doing and how it's coming out of my hand. And when I do that, it feels so much easier and natural when I actually throw the ball. But I will say, like in that much detail, I wasn't great at doing every single pitch because it's tough. It's tough to like the game speeds up on you, especially when you give up a hit or you're holding runners on base. All those things like the game can speed up on you. And then you add the pitch clock nowadays to where that suppresses your time as well. So I'd be curious how that's impacted you too. Like, do you feel like that's affected your pre-pitch routine?
It really hasn't. I think the pitch clock has been um, like something that's on my mind, but it hasn't really affected how I pitched just because my pre-pitch routine doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
I think what it really affects me with is the time between pitches. Like I would sometimes walk around the mound just to like catch my
Yeah.
breath, but you can't do that anymore. You gotta catch the ball and then get back on the mound and it's pre-pitch routine. Let's go.
Yep.
And that's been actually a pretty big challenge because now you have to flush your like bad results really quickly.
Hmm.
If you made a terrible pitch and you're not feeling too great about it, but now you're on the mound, you got to make a new pitch straight away. It's like, all
Yep.
right, how can you flash that as soon as possible, and then get on to the next pitch?
Yep.
And that's also something that I'm exploring right now and seeing how I can do that. What are your thoughts on how to do that?
No, I saw it firsthand, right? Like coaching with the Twins, like the first year of the pitch clock, it was a lot for guys. Like if they were falling behind guys, they walked somebody or they gave up a few hits, like they wanted to take a breath and they really couldn't. So you had to kind of get creative and come up with strategies. And like one thing that we would do is if there was no one on base, especially, we would just tell the catcher, don't throw the ball back to the pitcher right away because the clock doesn't start till he catches the ball. So we were like, we'd have the pitcher just kind of put his hand up, like, give me a second to take a breath. And then the catcher would throw the ball back to him. So there's little things like that you can do. But man, if you're not careful, the game can really speed up on you with the pitch clock. So something to think about. And it's a reminder of how important that process is of breathing and being able to reset and figuring out what that method is for you.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And how about like after games? Did you have a routine that you would go through after games mentally to flush it or reinforce what you did well during your playing days?
Yeah, I was a very big routine person. So like I mentioned before games, I would write down like what my goals were for the day, what I wanted to accomplish. And then usually that night I would go over them. How well did I do? If it was a bad game, sometimes I would wait till the next morning.
Mhm.
Because sometimes when you're like just in the heat of it and like it's the same day, sometimes you're not going to process things the same way because you're just not ready to deal with it sometimes. So like a lot of times I would give myself like the rest of that night. And then the next morning, that was kind of a part of my day after routine of reflecting on the game. If I had video, I'd go over the game. And then just kind of dive into my goals on did I hit all of these or like where did I fall short and what does my focus need to be for the rest of the week. So that was the day after was a really big day for kind of mapping out what the rest of my week looked like from a throwing standpoint, drill standpoint, and just what my focus needed to be.
Mm. Yeah, and how about what would your advice be for relievers? I know for a starter, and I've always been a starter my whole career, but I've always admired how relievers like bounce back so quickly because they have to pitch back-to-back days or they
Yep.
have one day's rest and they come back and they don't really have that time to reflect and be like, all right, I need to do this, this, and this to get better. It's more like, oh, it's just a bad day. Like, just gotta flush
Right.
it and I'm gonna go out and compete again.
Y Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah, you don't have the time most of the time, and so one thing I try to tell relievers is don't look at it necessarily from, like, one game to the next, like, don't judge yourself off of one game, especially if it was 1 inning or you came in for 3 batters, like, that's such a small sample. Maybe you just didn't have feel for the slider that night and you only threw 3 of them because you didn't have an opportunity to throw more. I like to, like, almost with relievers, take it, like, week by week, reflect after the end of each week when you threw maybe 2 or 3 times, reflect on what went well, what didn't go well. Was there a trend from each game? Like, was your fastball command off all 3 games? Was it just one game? Because you can really get into the weeds too much if you're going game by game as a reliever because it's such a small sample. Like, there's so much variance day to day, and maybe you only threw a couple of that specific pitch. So it's just not enough to judge yourself off of. But I do think like it's important to still have key process stats, whether it's first pitch strikes, early and ahead, in zone percentage with a certain pitch. Like I think players should have specific goals and really just try to hold yourself accountable to following those and making sure that those are trending in the right direction. Maybe not every game it's perfect, but like if over the course of week after week you're trending in the right direction, you're on the right track. So that would be my advice with relievers is just like try not to look at individual games, try to go week by week to where you can get a little bit bigger of a sample.
Mm, yeah. And we're going I'm gonna go a little bit off topic here, but the first pitch strike thing
Yeah.
is it's crazy how important it is.
Yep.
I saw a stat about it. It was like when you get to 0-1, it was I think you would know better than me. It's like most of the hitters become outs as
Yep.
soon as you get to 0-1. Do you know the stat behind that?
I don't know the top of my head. I've posted about it, but I don't have it memorized.
Mm,
It's something crazy though. Like your strikeout rate after strike one is like 30 something percent, and you only walk like 3% of guys. And after ball one, it's like 16% strikeouts and 16% walks, or 19% walks or something. Like it's just insane. Like you throw a first pitch strike and you pitch like a Cy Young winner after that.
hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. When I heard about that, I was like, wow, like I got to work on my first pitch strikes because that
Yeah.
just makes you a better pitcher just like that.
Well, here's the
So,
thing. So let's this is off topic, but I think it's actually really important. It's sort of not off topic actually with early season struggles, because I'm actually looking at college stats right now from this season. In 2024, so this year, the average first pitch strike rate is 56.8%. That's really low. That's for that to
mm,
be the Division One average, that's pretty low. Average in the big leagues is like 60%, 61%. So typically I try to get guys to 60% or higher. And then the second stat, early and ahead, in college baseball right now, the average is 67%. The goal is to be at least 70% with that. So for those that don't know what early and ahead is, an early is anytime the ball is put in play on 3 pitches or less, not counting 2-0. So if the ball is put in play 0-0, 0-1, 1-0, and 1-1, you get credit for an early. Doesn't matter if it's a hit, an out, doesn't matter. Ball in play, 3 pitches or less. An ahead is anytime you get to an 0-2 or a 1-2 count. Once again, it doesn't matter what happens after that. You could strike him out, or you could give up a home run, or you could hit the guy. You still get credit for an ahead. You can only get one per at bat though. So like let's just say you get to 0-2 and you strike somebody out on 3 pitches, that would only count as an ahead, not an early. So you add those two up. So add all of your earlies up, add all of your heads up, and you divide it by the batters faced. So if I faced 10 batters and I was early and ahead on 7 of them, that would be 7 out of 10, 70% early and ahead. The best in baseball are like 80 to 80% is really, really good. So like I think the best in baseball last year was like 82 or 83%. I think it was George Kirby for the Mariners. He was unreal. So the point of that, or what I wanted to say about that, is first pitch strikes are super important. Like they're really important. But I have seen some guys get in their head a little bit with first pitch strikes because they put so much pressure on that first pitch to where if they don't throw a strike, they're like, oh, the at bat's over. I'm behind 1-0. I'm going to give up a hit. I'm going to walk a guy. But you still have an opportunity for an earlier and ahead, right? It's 1-0. Okay. I'm going to challenge right here. He's going to put the ball in play. I get credit for an early. Or I'm going to pound the zone these next couple of pitches. I'm 1-2 now. Like the at bat isn't over. Now, if I throw a first pitch strike, my chances of getting an earlier and ahead do go up, of course. But I think the important thing to remember is the goal is first pitch strikes. But if you don't throw a first pitch strike, the at bat isn't over. So don't give up. Challenge them on the next pitch, and you can get right back in the count and still have an opportunity for a really good early and ahead number.
mm, yeah, that's super similar to what we focus on with the Rangers is we focus on race to 2K, which I
Yep.
think is pretty much the same thing. But yeah, no, that was actually going to be my question was how do you get guys to start throwing more first pitch strikes? Because as you said, a lot of it isn't really skill based. It's more like mental. And I felt this as well. It's like, damn, it's 0-0 and I need to throw a strike here. But then I'm starting to put a lot of pressure on myself, being
Yep.
like, well, if I don't want to miss it because then I'm missing out on all that like the stats of the hitter being out and stuff like that. So how
Exactly.
would you go about increasing that stat?
So there's a couple ways to do it. Like there is a little bit of a skill aspect to where if a guy just has no feel for pitches, we probably got to do some different things. But let's just assume, generally speaking, he throws strikes. The first thing we want to do is we want to look at his usage. So what pitches is he throwing first pitch? We want to throw pitches that we can throw for a strike. We want to throw pitches that are high end zone pitches. So, fastballs typically are going to be a high end zone pitch. We want to throw pitches that also are going to induce swings early. So if I throw a curveball 0-0, it has to be in zone because curveballs hardly ever get swung at first pitch. So just by shifting that usage and getting in zone more, or sorry, shifting your usage more and just throwing those pitches that are strikes more early, you're going to increase your chances more. The second way is to literally try to throw it right down the middle. Don't worry about getting cute, going to the corners, 0-0. Challenge them to swing the bat. And, if you look up and you've made 3-4 starts and they are just ripping the first pitch, okay, we can make an adjustment. But generally speaking, hitters do not swing at the first pitch enough. So challenge them middle. And Josh, you can attest to this too. how many times do you actually throw it right down the middle when you're trying to go middle?
Yeah, not many times.
Right? Like if you
Mhm.
actually are hitting it dead middle when you're actually trying to, then you probably have the skill to actually nitpick a little bit and go to the edges a little bit. So those are like the two fastest things. Throw your highest in zone pitches early, and also throw middle location. Like those are the two quickest things you can do.
Mhm. Yeah, I gotta start doing that for sure. Sometimes I just whip out a sweeper. First pitch and
If
say,
it's
"All
in
right, maybe
zone,
I shouldn't have done that."
if it's in zone.
Yeah, if it's in zone, but it's rarely in zone, so
Yeah, that's great, man.
yeah.
Well, I think this was great for the first episode. I think we covered a
Mhm.
lot of really good stuff that can help guys. We touched on some early season struggles, some pre-pitch routines, first pitch strikes, all of those things. So hopefully there's some good takeaways for guys. But I'm excited for the future of this show and where it's going to lead and whatnot. So, but before we go, and we'll put this in the show notes, but like, where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, the best place would be Twitter or X. My username is Gessner Josh, and you can send me a message whenever. I'll make sure to reply to those. And I'm posting a lot of baseball style content, so I'm just trying to provide as much value as I can right now. And so, yeah, that's probably the best way to reach me right now.
Perfect. And then you got a newsletter too, right?
Yeah, I did do a newsletter for a little bit, but I'm taking a little bit of a
Oh, okay.
detour from that. Yeah,
Perfect. Cool. And then
yeah,
for me, Twitter's the best spot. Pitching Coach U, pitchingcoachu.com for the website. I have a newsletter on there. I send it out every Monday for coaches and players. So awesome. Well, I really enjoyed this and looking forward to next week.
awesome.